the family meeting.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I am ready. I was looking up to see how many pages are in this book. I'm reading this DEI book called Inclusion Uncomplicated. And one of the things that I have thought about DEI is that it's very, how do you feel? It's a lot about like
Subjective.
Subjective is a word. Um in like, yeah, it's very subjective. It's very feelings based. We want to make sure that people feel included, that people feel like they belong. It's actually diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
That's the new thing.
Yeah, taking the belonging concept that Brene Brown really made popular. I used to love Brene Brown. Honey.
When you are progressive.
Yeah. But I used to love Brene Brown. My gosh, her book Daring Greatly. When I went to South Africa last month, my friend, my sister from another mister, I walked in her house and that was the very first thing I saw was she had she has a stack of stuff that I still have there. I am that person. I need to clean out my mess. And she had the Brene Brown book and I was like,
oh, it's your stuff.
It was my stuff.
She still got your stuff after 6.5 years.
She loves me. It's just a little collection. And yes, that Brene Brown book was there. And I was like, I'm going to take this with me because there are some things I need to read in here and just pull out as being untrue. But yeah, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And so I'm reading this book and get back to my story called Inclusion Uncomplicated, a transformative guide to simplify DEI. So I'm reading all these books on DEI right now. And in the second chapter of this book, well, throughout the introduction in the first chapter, the word feeling came up a lot, or feel. But in chapter 2, it was just almost every other word. I was so tired of like this word feel. So I searched it in the Kindle version of it, and it came up 147 times in a book that is 208 pages.
The word feel?
The word feel, or some version of it. Feels, feel, feeling. I searched feel. And I was like, my gosh, like.
So that made you wonder how much of DEI is just about your feelings and affirming feelings?
Affirming someone's feelings.
Yeah.
How do we affirm that how do we affirm your feelings so that you're not upset, basically? How do we make you feel included? Which is problematic because you can go out of your way. You can throw me a party every day. And if I am someone who struggles with self-esteem, or I struggle just emotionally, I may never feel included. I might never feel good enough, or you know what I mean? Or like I belong.
Yeah. The elusive belonging. Okay, people are jumping on. Alexandria. Future's here.
Jermaine is here. What's up, people?
Jenny. So do you want to know what I've been reading? Or are we only talking about what you're reading?
No, go ahead. What you been reading? Oh, go ahead. What
equity.
What have you been reading on equity?
No, I'm just saying I need equity.
Oh, you need equity.
So just opening my Kindle. Dissertation reading. I've been reading through Anthony Thistleton.
I don't know who that is.
That's big fun.
Who is he?
He's a scholar who specializes in hermeneutics. On and off, I'm reading through a gentle parenting book.
I could not. I would. Yeah. That's why I don't have kids yet.
I'm learning a lot because it honestly, it reminds me of when I've been in therapy. It's a lot of like therapeutic techniques, really, in the book that I'm reading.
This is why we need The Calling of the American Mind as a book that goes along with that. Like, don't gentle your kids so much that they can't, leave the nest, or they're afraid to make friends.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting book. It's not exactly what I was expecting it to be. And understanding the project, it does remind me a lot of therapy. It's interesting. So I'm reading through that, and
go ahead, keep going.
I'm reading. I finished recently. What's his name's book on Christian nationalism? Mark David Hall. We had him on the show earlier in the year, so his book on Christian nationalism came out.
What'd you think about it?
Very mixed. The chapters on defining Christian nationalism, very helpful. not helpful is that it doesn't have a lot of practical application.
Mm-hmm.
So after I get all my definitions correct,
Mm-hmm.
how do I apply this to public policy?
Mm-hmm.
It was very light on that.
Mm-hmm.
So not super helpful. I wouldn't really recommend it unless you're doing like a literature survey of books on Christian nationalism. So my other book is I'm also reading Andrew T. Walker's book. And
Oh, I need to read that
I'm
book.
not sure why it's not showing up here.
What's the
It's
name of that book?
Faithful Reason.
Yeah.
It's like 450 pages. I'm
Mm-hmm.
slowly working my way through that. It's kind of a natural, Christian informed
Natural
natural
law.
law approach to public policies. A very helpful book.
Oh, good. I
So
am starting my natural law deep dive in the next
it's
week or two.
slow going, but yeah. So those are some
Hmm.
of the things I'm reading.
Can we go back there? I think there's something to be said about gentle parenting. Than how some prior generations did things, but some of the gentle parenting goes to a whole different level. I'm for full contact parenting personally, but
No, actually, after reading this book, a lot of these things in this book
really,
are things that you do
really,
with kids.
really,
Yeah, it's actually not what you think it is.
that's awesome. Maybe I'll take a
So
look at it.
it reminds me a lot of like techniques you've talked about in working with kids with trauma, and like I can really see a case for it, especially if you're working with a child who's coming out of foster care or some kind of trauma issue, but some of it I think is silly.
But I mean,
So,
then
yeah.
do we need to make a distinction between trauma informed care versus trauma informed care with a child, or a child who has experienced adverse childhood experiences or ACEs, versus how we may parent a child who has not. I also, this idea of gentle parenting, when I hear it now, mind you, I haven't read the book and I haven't done like a whole deep dive on gentle parenting, but it makes me wonder, is this something that works for every child? Because I see children as being complete, like I have child A and then I have child B. They can come and be born in the same environment, but child B might need a completely different disciplinary structure than child A.
I don't know. I mean, you have a lot more experience with children than I do. But for
But
me,
oddly, I don't have any. There it is.
in raising my own kids, and they were very different in personality and
Mhm,
needs and everything. There's a lot of the book that I was like, "Oh yeah, this is what I did. This
mhm.
is how I did it." And I just know there was a name for it. But there's other parts of it that I think like reasoning with a 3-year-old is kind of silly. But I'm just working my way through it. So I haven't really like processed it all yet. So,
Interesting. Interesting.
all right.
Monique is all about just wait, what? Form tackling people. Sometimes that 3-year-old got to go down. And I don't know that like I would never reason with a 3-year-old. I think it depends on what you're talking about as far as like reason and what's up for grabs and like what we're talking about. How do you help them develop some
Yeah.
skills?
Yeah. Okay, so what are we doing?
Um, let's start with let me go.
I can't read this. My vision is so bad. Should we talk about this comment? Is
Let's
that
see.
a
The entire Pride LGBTQ plus is
I guess we're going to
purely
talk about it since she's reading it.
a political movement and not a sexual one. If you delve deep into queer Marxist and queer theory like Foucault and Gail Rubin, I don't know that I would completely agree or completely disagree.
And you've done a fair amount on
Yeah,
queer study on primary sources on queer theory.
yes. So I would more than maybe socio-political. I think that the queer movement is definitely tied to or has hitched itself to the civil rights movement, and that has opened up an entire new discourse of what the queer movement is, when all of that started. But I do think that it's tied to something larger, which even goes back to like a Hegelian project, um in like discourse and norms, and what do we want to do with society, where is society going, how do we queer society. And so does that extend into the political realm? Yes. But is that a larger social project as well? Yes. I think that it's a very interesting comment. Make a good conversation. as to, if you do a deep dive into some of the
Here's a comment
queer
for me.
Marxist thinking.
Olivia got one of my stickers at the Buffalo conference on I don't co-parent with the government. She's gotten a lot of compliments. Yay.
Hello.
Welcome to the family meeting. Okay, what are we doing?
Okay. Let's talk about the very first thing. I want to talk about you. I didn't see the debate.
Oh,
I did not see the debate. I think I was working late.
yeah.
And then
You had to get dinner.
yeah, and then I had to get dinner and then I went to bed. I slept for like 10 and a half hours last night. I was tired, y'all. But I saw a couple of comments from people in this, like not in this stream, but I've seen a couple of comments from people just on my different timelines, especially on Twitter, who were wanting to take Vance to task. And I was like, "Oh, I wonder what happened about the whole abortion thing." But what I saw a lot too was just, I really need chapstick, was a just, why are you laughing?
Keep going.
What I saw really, I think if I had to boil them all down into like a central theme, was this a confusion of like, what are we doing? What are we voting for? People were like, I don't know how to vote because both sides are pro-abortion. And or one side is very pro-abortion, the other side is, light pro-abortion, which I don't know if that's even a thing. So yeah, I've just seen a lot of confusion in the voting. I've seen a lot of comments on, maybe you just don't vote at all. Like if it's to vote for Kamala or Kamala, whatever. If it's to vote for the Harris team versus withholding your vote, then you should just withhold your vote. So I just wanted to come and ask you because I didn't see it, and I know you have a lot of wisdoms and thoughts.
I don't know if I got much, but so last night was the vice presidential debate between JD Vance and Tim Walz. And my husband and I were it's something we enjoy together is watching political things and watching conventions and debates, and it's something that he and I enjoy together. And uh Vance, I think, definitely was the better debater in this situation. He's an attorney, and so that makes sense, I think that the section on abortion was interesting. I was watching Twitter as I was watching the debate, and there was a lot of people. Our friend Allie Beth had a tweet. Uh, Sam Say had a couple tweets. Like there was definitely some
Frustrated with Vance.
With Vance, and understanding that the Republican platform, which has historically been very overtly pro-life, jettisoned that position this year in their platform, and so now they're for some forms of baby murder, and it was an interesting thing. Let's play a couple clips here, and then we can kind of
clips and
talk about it. Yeah.
Nora? Thank you. Now to the issue of reproductive rights. Governor Walz, after Roe versus Wade was over.
Okay, first of all, can we just talk about the word reproductive rights? This is a stupid term.
Well, I mean, it sounds better than pro-abortion or
baby murder.
That's
my preferred word.
But that's the whole change of definitions and terms. Anyway, that's a whole other topic.
I'm just calling attention to this sort of euphemism.
Play the clip. That we're using. Go get chapstick.
All right, bye.
Returned, you signed a bill into law that made Minnesota one of the least restrictive states in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind.
Okay. So, Mr. Walz, It just lies. This is just a lie. Like I don't even know. Like I'm always trying to be so careful in what I say and try to be congenial, but he just lies. He lied a lot, and so yes, that his state. And I went on their. Let me see. Let me find it. Where is that? Okay. So Megan Kelly, who is a commentator that I will admit that I do enjoy, she had the fact check and she says, no, actually, Tim Walz did repeal the law that protected babies born alive after failed abortions. And she's got the receipts here on Twitter. And it was in 2021. You can go look that up. I mean, he just lies. I mean, they did that. Then I went on the Attorney General page for the state of Minnesota, and you can read all of those receipts. And I read through it fairly inspectionally this afternoon. And you can go through this. This is on the Minnesota's government page. Know your rights to abortion and reproductive health care in Minnesota. There's a whole page here about how there are absolutely no restrictions when it comes to abortion. In fact, you don't even have to be a doctor to perform an abortion in the state of Minnesota. You can be a nurse practitioner. It doesn't have to be in a doctor's office. It can be in some other facility. They stripped out any sort of parental notifications for minors. They've overturned processes of having a 24-hour cooling off period. You don't have to have any sort of ultrasound. You don't have to. They removed the bill about codifying parental rights. It's 100% baby murder without restrictions all the way, all the time. And if you run into a problem, they even have you a handy dandy email here where you can email the state directly to express any concerns where your right to a baby murder has been infringed on. And so they make it very handy for you.
Got a service line?
Yeah. And and I thought it was interesting. It says it multiple times on this page. Every Minnesotan has a fundamental right to baby murder. So we're going to call it reproductive health, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to call it what it is baby murder. So Tim Walz, he's just a lying liar on this issue. I don't know how to sugarcoat that. I don't know how to be nice about it. He's just a lying liar. All right, so let's skip to JD Vance.
States in the nation when it comes to abortion. Former President Trump said in the last debate that you believe abortion, quote, in the 9th month is absolutely fine. Yes or no? Is that what you support? I'll give you 2 minutes.
That's not what the bill says, but look, this issue is what's on everyone's mind. Donald Trump put this all into motion.
Okay, that's the wrong clip. Let me get the right clip. But I do think it's interesting. There was a poll out last week of the number of women who support baby murder. Like this is a really big issue for them in the election. It is astronomically high. That this is kind of their big issue.
Wow.
Women, and I think that the Vance Trump campaign knows they cannot win the election without having concessions on this.
And I want to talk about this issue because I know a lot of Americans care about it, and I know a lot of Americans don't agree with everything that I've ever said on this topic. And, you know, I grew up in a working class family neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. And I think that what I take from that as a Republican who proudly wants to protect.
Okay, let's just talk about that statement for a second. What is he saying there? He's saying he's skirting around the issue of whether or not the baby in the womb is a human.
Mm-hmm.
But he's saying, you know, if I'm in an abusive relationship, it's okay for me to do baby murder. But nobody would say that if you were in a situation where you were in an abusive relationship. Well, let me kill my toddler.
Yeah.
So that that person doesn't have to be abused. We come around, we support, we make a way out, we have DV shelters, we resource them, we help them escape. But why is JD Vance, who is a Catholic convert, saying, well, my friend engaged in baby murder because she was in a DV situation? I just want us to understand these euphemisms and catch them. Sometimes they're going by so quickly, we don't even realize it. Okay.
Innocent life in this country, who proudly wants to protect the vulnerable, is that my party, we've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us. And I think that's one of the things that Donald Trump and I are endeavoring to do. I want us as a Republican Party to be pro-family in the fullest sense of the word.
Okay, so the biggest issue is trust. And he says that a couple times. I didn't play it both clips, but he kept saying, you know, the problem is Republicans have lost trust with women over baby murder. And, you know, I don't think that's actually our biggest problem.
No.
We were taking a principled stand for a long time to protect the unborn, the most vulnerable among us. And now we're saying, not only are we okay, and Trump tweeted earlier today, I didn't pull this up, but he had a big tweet of like, you know, I'm for life, I'm pro-life, I want to protect against late-term abortions, but I have the 3 exceptions of Reagan, of baby murder in the case of rape, incest, and the health of the mother. And you know, it's just it's sad because now we're extending the baby murder into the IVF realm as well, which is now also part of the Republican platform. So even though rape and incest constitute, like, I think less than 3% of abortions, we're not really doing, you know, like we are actually expanding the scope of the problem with the unborn and not protecting them. But just so that we're aware, like, because Vance is a Catholic convert, he used to be, this is from CNN, he used to be he used to want to advocate for a national anti-abortion law. And he has had to step that back because they just cannot win an election. So this is an appeal to pragmatism. This is an appeal to you know, what must we do to win? And that's, I think that there's a comment on here that kind of is a good summary. Somebody said, I think that Christians feel like they're going to be complicit with baby murder by voting for Republicans because they just aren't really protecting the unborn in the way that they should.
Yeah.
And so there are people that you know, feel conflicted about voting for the Trump Vance ticket because of that.
I think conflicted is a good word, but I think it's bigger than conflicted almost, because there are people now who are just like, I'm just not voting.
Yeah.
I'm just stepping out. And I don't know that helps. In the long run, I don't know. I mean, I have to stay to live with the I don't know at this moment, and like wrestling with my thoughts all day today of, is it better to withhold the vote, or is it better to vote with the party that most closely
Look,
aligns? But then this takes it out of the realm of closely aligns for me. I don't know.
yeah, I mean, at this point, what we're voting for, these are the people that we can vote for. Like when people are like, well, you shouldn't, vote for someone else, vote for a principal person. Well, there's nobody like that, running.
And
We have
even if they were, like, I feel like it always comes down to a two-party system.
in our country, yeah, and it's it's so hard because this is why we need the gospel. We need regenerate hearts.
Mhm.
And it's sad to me that Vance, as a Catholic convert, has softened his position based on pragmatism on this issue. He doesn't seem informed about the ethical problems with IVF. I keep hoping his priest or somebody will, talk to him about it. But yeah, it's a tough issue. I think for me, it's like I plan to vote. There's a large number of evangelicals though who just opt out and they don't vote. And um, do I the biblical position of the government is God wants them to protect the innocent and punish the guilty. Well, at this point, I'm only voting for someone who might punish a few more people and protect a few more people than the other
Yeah.
side. So that's kind of where it's at. The only other thing I wanted to bring up was, and I don't have this clip, but there was which is really unfortunate because I wanted to play it. But there was some discussion in the debate that Walls brought up in his section of claiming that a woman had died because she couldn't get an abortion because she lived in Georgia, which has a heartbeat bill. And he said, that she couldn't get to the baby murder place,
Mhm.
and um isn't it horrible, and we can't have any
You said
restrictions.
Vance brought this up?
No,
Or Waltz,
walls.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And so I wanted to point out that our friend Dr. Chris had an editorial last week in Newsweek, which I
Mhm.
think is wonderful, as a very solid Christian, getting published in a
Yeah.
mainstream periodical and on their website. So go check this out. We featured it, I think, in the digital newsletter this last week. And that's why you want to be subscribed to our weekly digital newsletter, because we don't just send out CFPU things. If there's something really important that a friend of the ministry has published, we'll alert you to that too. But this is a wonderful editorial kind of debunking that myth that the woman
Mhm.
died because she couldn't get an abortion. Now, she died because of chemical abortion
Yeah.
that they always tell you is safer than taking Tylenol, which is just another lie.
Yeah.
And so, there's just Walls had so many lies last night when it came to abortion. Dr. Chris, who is a board certified OBGYN, friend of the ministry, she breaks it all down in that editorial in Newsweek and that's a great response to what Walls said last night. So that's pretty much the deal
Okay.
with what happened. And it was I was sad for Vance. I think um, I was frustrated with Walls and his lies, and sad for Vance on his kind of pragmatic, unprincipled position. So that's it.
Okay. Well,
So now you can ask me your questions now that there's context. If you want to ask something like that.
girl, my questions was so long ago.
Oh, okay.
I've had chapstick since then. I don't know what I was
Okay.
going to ask you. Sorry, friend. But if you guys have questions, put them in the chat.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the next thing because I found this
Okay.
highly interesting.
This one?
No, I think it's the next one. Yes.
Okay.
So in Minnesota a couple of days ago, the news broke that there was, it has since closed down and is looking for a new home. But a food pantry that only services Black and Indigenous people. You hungry?
I hope not, because I'm not getting any food at the food pantry. I don't qualify.
You don't. I thought this was very interesting because it is this is from the Daily Mail. It's a taxpayer funded.
Sorry, there's all these ads. I tried to click out of them before we started, but the Daily Mail is just the worst. So go ahead.
Oh, I didn't know. Sorry,
Oh,
friend.
they're horrible.
But there's a taxpayer funded food pantry in Minneapolis, Minnesota, that has a sign up that said, and like I said, they are looking for a new place. They were housed in a church or on the grounds of a church. And it said, if that this food pantry is for Black and Indigenous folks.
This is the gal who runs it.
That's the part. Now, some might say she fits the description of the social justice warrior with the colored hair, the piercings, the tattoos. But I don't want to say everybody with colored hair and piercings and tattoos.
Let's focus on the sign.
But yeah, we're going to just go to the sign. The resources found in here are intended for Black and Indigenous folks. Please refrain from taking anything if you're not. I wish they had a picture of the actual food pantry because it's like a very small, just closet, like in the openness. I can't really describe it.
I like this picture. Liberate the people.
Honey, we only liberating Black folks.
Black
and
folks.
Indigenous. Yes.
FOLX.
Yes, I think that has to go along with like the whole Latinx and all that.
One of the shelves. There's not a lot happening.
But that's the whole pantry, if I'm not mistaken.
Now, you actually used to run a multi-site food pantry once upon a time.
Once upon a time, I sure did.
Did you have a sign up that said no white people?
No, not at all. And now ours too. Well, ours was not housed on a church property, and we were completely separate from the church, but we were originally founded by the church.
Right.
The problem I have a number of problems with this, but my largest problem is, how are you taking the taxpayer money that comes from all the tax-paying people, and then saying we're going to take all the people's money, but then we're not going to equally distribute it to all the people?
Well, I think it was a grant.
That's what I'm saying. But it's a taxpayer-funded grant.
I see.
It's a taxpayer-funded grant that was meant to help African-American, U.S.-born citizens, people who need help, like in regards to health. And so what I assume this woman did was she created a food pantry to be able to give healthy food, to be able to help like in food deserts and things like that. But I am, as someone who is like definitely passionate about social service, I would say, how do we apply social service equally if we're going to do something like a food pantry? Should our skin color determine the access we have to social service?
Yeah, that's interesting. People are asking, like, is that legal? I think it would depend on the nature of the money, and I don't know whether that would be legal or not. Depends on if it's taxpayer funded.
Well, we do have grants that are taxpayer funded that go to certain demographics. So I can think of those like people with mental health issues. So we have a whole department, the Department of Mental Health, and the Department of Mental Health gets money, grants, and different social service organizations can apply for DMH money to serve this population. The veterans, you have every state has some huge veteran office to be able to serve vets. I would say that these categories, though, are different than saying only Black people. To me, I see a distinction there that isn't so artificial.
Yeah. I like we did a training last year at a Christian university, and they had gotten a grant to help Latino students improve their study skills and test scores. But what they did was they didn't limit it to only Latino students. They opened it up, and we came and did the training, and we did the training from the perspective of how to help all students improve their study skills and their test scores.
Yeah.
And so but you know more about grants than I do. You have a lot more experience with that. Like, is that okay to, well, we got this money to help this group of people, but can we expand it to making it applicable to everybody
That would have to be what is written
in the grant?
and
Yeah.
I haven't read it, so I don't know. I just think that I would take issue with the grant itself
Mm,
if it was like, this food can only go to Black people.
yeah.
Like,
I don't know if I'd want that grant money.
yeah, I take issue with a fundamental need now
Mm,
being siphoned off, and we're playing partiality with this,
yeah.
especially when in that area. So what I saw in the article was that like 50% of the people are white, 18% are Black, something like that, and then the rest are, you know, varying ethnicities. So where did you get the taxpayer money? The majority of that money, if from tax-paying citizens, I would assume would have had to come from white people. But Black people would take an issue if you took the money out of my pocket and then told me I can't get no food. You can't make that make sense for a Black person. We'd be, oh heck no, no, just no. But we're not thinking about it that way. And
Yeah.
I would say, even from a biblical, like I always want to approach this biblically, this level of partiality that the culture wants to, and that the culture wants to play in,
Yeah.
is just insane. But then they tell you that it's not partiality. They want to tell you, well, it's equity. Or that, well, because of historic wrongs, we gonna feed the Blacks but not the whites. Like, you can't make it make sense.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're raising good questions there. Okay, Monks is asking a good question. What are your thoughts about Ray Orban's tweet?
Honey.
Just a second, on X
Woo!
regarding supporting abortion. I haven't seen that tweet, that particular one. He had a different kind of crazy tweet over the
On
weekend
Threads.
on Threads. That's right, it was on Threads. But if you have something and you want to send
So
it to me, send it to me. I haven't seen the one on abortion.
this is what I'm thinking, because the message on Threads said, shoot, let me see if I can find this. He said that he was a never Trumper, and because he was a never Trumper, somebody brought up the issue of abortion. I didn't I send you that tweet
I'm trying
or
to
that
look.
thread?
I'm trying to go back.
We do communicate a lot.
But
that, because, and so I don't know that he actually made an abortion comment. If he did make an abortion comment, then let us know. But what I think they're referring to is that because he's a never Trumper, he's gonna vote for Kamala and Walz. And
he said this time Kamala, always Jesus, never Trump. This time Kamala.
But someone brought up in the thread, but what about abortion? And he did have a comment that was like, abortion isn't the biggest problem. Something to that effect. It wasn't verbatim that. So I don't want to go on record as being like, he said this isn't the biggest problem. But it was something to that effect. Keep going up.
Oh my gosh, I'm scrolling for days here. Okay. Is it that one?
But then he deleted it.
He
deleted the whole thread. And so, yeah, I can't go back. So I sent you, he says, I have deleted a post from earlier today because it was being misinterpreted. I should have foreseen it, my fault. But I did send it to you.
But it's like, what was misinterpreted? I don't know if there was anything misinterpreted.
No, keep going down.
Yeah.
Yeah, here it is.
Okay. All right. Well, hold on. Let me get it up on the screen here. Give me a little second.
Monks, I'm so glad you brought that up, because in my spirit, I had really wanted to, but we hadn't talked about it first, and I didn't want to catch you off guard. But somebody else can totally catch you off guard. Amen. Okay.
All right, hold on. Almost there. Okay, I'm gonna let's see. There we go.
Okay, so the context of this, because we are not showing the original thread. The original thread said that he was a never Trumper, that this time it was going to be, well, this is the important part, that this time it was going to have to be Kamala, but he would always be for Jesus. And so, yeah, it says never Trump, this time Harris, always Jesus. Okay, let's scroll back. Now, someone else said, Music Mandal said, how can you vote for Harris as a believer? Do you think that killing babies is something Jesus would support? Put your personal views on the person aside and vote for the party that is going to support your morals and religious faith. I believe that any party that has any association with murdering children of God should be immediately out of the question. Okay, so it doesn't sound like this guy is going to be pro-Trump or pro-Harris, because I mean, now this was before the debate, so maybe
Yeah.
I don't know. But Ortland responds, abortion is a horrible evil. But the evils on the other side have risen to levels that jeopardize the foundational rule of law in our country. I'm thinking long term and voting for us to have a chance at national renewal in the future. Monks, you can put in the comment if that's what you're talking about or if
Yeah.
you're talking about something else.
So what are your thoughts on this response?
I disagree. Actually, I don't see it that way. I don't see, and they talk about this whole Trump derangement syndrome. I don't know if I'm a complete believer in that, but I don't see Trump's policies or positions as being inherently racist, as being something that's going to send our country back, that's going to put Black people back in chains, that, is going to jettison our Constitution. These are things that I've heard about Trump and like what he's going to do. But what I do see on the other side is a lot of Marxist talk, and socialist, communication. I see this, abortion all the way up until the time of birth. Like this is what I see. And so when people say that, they're looking for the long term of the country, things that are going to jeopardize our, foundational or fundamental rule of law, I don't know what they're talking about. Now, JD French came on here and
No, it's not
co-signed.
JD French.
David French. Sorry, I'm thinking JD Vance. David French came on and he co-signed.
Yeah, he said this is the way.
Yeah, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? To me, my heart just hurts to think that this is where we are as, forget the culture, this is where we are as the church. That the church is talking about, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
The church is talking about, it would be better to vote this way for people who are like, abortion up until the time of birth. I mean, we got to go that way. To me, I'm just, yeah.
I think what helped me understand this mentality of the jeopardizing the foundational rule of law in our country, I never understood what they were saying with that until I watched, while you were in Africa, I watched the Kamala or Evangelicals for Harris Zoom call. And that was
that must have been big fun. You did that while I was gone?
Yeah. That was a really it was a revelation for me, because almost every speaker mentioned that as a big concern that they have, that this is going to be the last election we ever have if Trump wins, that there's going to be we're jeopardizing the rule of law if he wins, that he's gonna become a dictator and a king. And
where do you get this?
I was not aware until I watched that Zoom call, like how pervasive this fear is. And I thought, I don't even know what this is about. Like, what is this rooted in? There's a couple of decontextualized comments that Trump has made that, like, maybe they haven't.
Very shaky. Sorry, keep going.
Maybe they haven't researched the context of the clip. So I would recommend, like, go back and for my live stream of the event and that if they don't against Trump, um, it's going to undermine the whole justice system.
But I
So
wonder
I don't know
how.
what it's based on.
But
It doesn't seem to be based on facts. Natalie, you're a former attorney. Explain it to me. I don't know what they're talking about. So
I wonder how much of it is because so many people have unknowingly adopted Marxian thought. Does that make sense?
well, everything that Kamala says, every time she opens her mouth and you hear her use the word equity, she's referring to communism and socialism.
Yes.
But people don't know that that's the code word.
No.
She can't go on all the channels and say socialism this and socialism that.
Well,
so she uses the euphemism of equity.
I wanted to talk about this, and we decided we weren't. Just I think Kevin and I are going to do a different show on this. But even AOC's comment of we need to win the world. What does she always say? Let me see, because she always says win the world. It's some win the world comment, but it's the last line in a communist manifesto where he is saying, let me see if I can open it real quick. She always says we have a world to win. The last line of a communist manifesto.
AOC.
Yeah, AOC is they have a world to win. Working men of all countries unite. It is they have a world to win. We have a world to win. I don't think that people understand the Marxian speak that is spoken right in front of us. I also don't think that people realize just how much of this communistic way of thinking or Marxist way of thinking has just been subtly pushed out into society and culture that people actually believe. And so when you get someone who is speaking a different type of speak, it is seen as a violent. It is seen as something that we must stand up against. We must have a revolution against it. But that was Marx's way of thinking, is that we need to have revolution. That's just my hunch, even down to Kamala's unburdened by what has been.
Unburdening.
Yeah, the whole being unburdened. What does she say? Her unburdened. She's said it like 1,003 times. Yeah, it's the whole everybody should
I gotta
know
quit
at
out
this
of
point,
this
being unburdened. Go ahead.
Daily Mail thing. I think that's what's breaking up the stream.
Oh, quit out of all of them.
Because
That's
there's
fine.
so much background noise and people are saying that streams getting affected. I think it's that stupid Daily Mail thing.
Sorry, people. But yes, Kamala and her being unburdened by what has been. Imagining a future while being unburdened by what has been. That being unburdened by what has been is it's a Marxist way of thinking. And he alludes to it. He doesn't necessarily say this exact quote, but there are like allusions to it in some of his writings. And so a lot of my time yesterday, because you and I had talked about this a couple weeks ago, right? Or maybe it was before I went to Africa, when I was like, she just speaks such Marxist speak.
Yeah. But I think that Kelly's making a great point here, is that Ortland should explain with facts how the other side is jeopardizing the foundational rule of law in our country. Because it sounds like a word salad to justify being a never Trumper. I have to agree. I want to see the evidence. And this was something that I did not hear on the Evangelicals for Harris call. This claim was made many times on that call. Same claim that Ortland is making, but I just don't see the evidence. I don't hear the case.
Yeah.
Like, what is the inductive case that you're making for this claim? And I just don't see it.
I think it's going
Somebody send it to me. If you got it, send it to me, because I don't see it.
I think it's going to be a lot of stuff about race and racism.
Yeah. Okay. Monks says, what are your thoughts if Kamala wins?
Look, Father, come quickly. Come now, Jesus. And, I don't want to be the person who is like looking for the escape latch, but please, Now, I do think that our country has written within the Constitution, like laws and things that will help protect us and
For a
limit,
while.
yeah, for a while and limit some of the scope of what she does. But we have to look at who her father is and what his father's belief systems are. He's written entire books on this stuff. Like, and what is her true view? I think people sleep on Kamala actually because she doesn't come off very eloquently, because she always talks about being unburdened by what has been, and she says the whole thing, and she has to cackle and all that. People sleep on her, and they make her out to be the person who is ignorant, the person who doesn't know, the person who is just ugh. I actually think you shouldn't sleep on Kamala. I don't think that I think what I do think is that our prices will skyrocket. I think that um the Biden administration has proven that. I wonder if we are not, if this type of political structure continues, if America is on a trajectory to become like Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. That's part of my questions, and just wondering, are we at a time in our history where we could see such a pivotal shift over the next 4, 8, 12 years, where we fully adopt policies and frameworks that lead us into communistic structures that will change the nature of our nation? That's me. You might not feel that way. Those are some of my questions.
I think if Kamala wins, it could get very bad for Christians
Mhm.
for a while. But that's all the more reason for us to sharpen our evangelism skills, because I think the harvest is ripe. And I think that what we don't want to fall into is this kind of opposite version of social justice where we're obsessed with our own social policies. And if they don't get implemented, then somehow the world's an imperfect
Yeah. Oh,
place.
yeah.
And, woe is me. We're going to have to sharpen our evangelism skills. We're going to have to be the church, be strong. And the church has weathered hard times before.
Mhm.
And even if America falls, Christianity will
Will
not
not.
fall. And so the most important thing we can do, like we can take some precautions about, our physical situation and shoring up some things and helping to protect our family. But ultimately, the thing we really need to shore up is our spiritual situation and knowing how to share the gospel and having a heart for evangelism that social justice oriented people, liberals, progressives, they might seem like you have to get out of the mindset that they're just obstinate. You have to get into a mindset that they're deceived and that they need help. They need a worldview correction. They need the real Jesus.
Mhm.
So if you just write them off as they're just obstinate, I'm not going to deal with them. You might be missing out on talking to the next Monique Duson. And so you have to think about, how am I going to be a provision for people that advance socialism, because eventually this thing's going to run its course.
Yeah.
And Christians need to be there with some good answers. I think a whole like area of apologetics that nobody is really exploiting right now and working on is advancing economic arguments from a Christian standpoint. There are people out there, like PragerU has some videos on economic issues and stuff, but that could be a whole ministry where everything, just like we focus on race and justice, there could be a whole ministry that just works on teaching people answers on money and economics questions, because eventually all this socialism, we all know it has a shelf life.
Mhm.
And so we have to raise our kids in the meantime to be strong, because once the shelf life of socialism is over in a country, who's left standing? So I don't know. Those are some of my thoughts about it.
I was going to say something similar, in that no matter what happens, my encouragement to the church would be not to fear,
Mm.
like not to enter into a space of cowardice or fearing the future, but to, yeah, much like you're saying, raise your kids to stand. What does it mean to stand strong? What does it mean to evangelize? What does it mean to not bow the knee if Christians were, required to do that? I was
Oh,
just go ahead.
I want to comment really quickly on this comment from Jenny because I think it's so important. You'll often hear Democrats talk about saving democracy.
Hmm.
They want to save democracy, so don't vote for Trump. She makes a very important point here that when Marxists say democracy or when leftists say democracy, they don't mean everyone voting. They mean people like them voting.
Hmm.
And so those of us who are on the more conservative side of things, when we hear the words, you need to, in order to save democracy, don't vote for Trump. I'm always find that statement very confusing because I'm thinking democracy represents, um, it could be, even though technically we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. It's a shorthand way of referring to our system
Hmm.
of government. And so it's like, well, how does voting for Kamala save democracy? This is how you decode that. Is that what they're saying is save the leftist
Hmm.
secular progressive way of life and policy and all of that. That's what they mean when they say save democracy.
You know what? Would you mind if we did the last one
Sure.
really quickly?
Yep.
Because I think that it's a good segue into um or like a good landing place.
Okay.
There was an article that came out not through the BBC. Was it through the BBC? Um, well, this one comes from the
Yeah, it's from the
BBC
BBC.
about a woman. I don't know, Baton maybe Kimmy Baton, and she wrote an article that says not all cultures are equally valid. And I'm not necessarily. I mean, we can put the link in the comments. I'm not necessarily as concerned about this article and what's being
She's
said.
some kind of a politician though. She works in the government somehow.
Mm,
She's connected with the government.
Well, in the just her words that not all cultures are equally valid, or this sentiment that not all
Yeah.
cultures are equally valid, got her deemed a racist, and that you think your culture is better than others, and that just is limiting, and that makes other people not feel as good, and like there was a whole like other reports written about her comments and things like that. And so it makes me want to remind us that not all cultures are equally valid. And as we are thinking about culture, as we're thinking about voting, as we are thinking about America and the future of America and the country that we love and all of that, we have to also think about, and Kevin and I just got off this, or you, me and Kevin had a conversation about this, about what does it mean, or not what does it mean, what is the culture that we want to promote? What is the way of being, or that culture that we would say this is what is good, true, and beautiful, and things should reflect this? And then what is on that next level? What is something that I can support? Because while it's not perfect, it still reflects more of the good, true, and beautiful that maybe this culture does. Our physical cultures, our cultures, are my half Haitian, I'm half Haitian. So the Haitian side of me, or the African American side of me, or the Dutch side of you, they all have things that are beautiful, but they also have things that can totally be damned and destroyed and condemned because they don't reflect the goodness and the truth and the beauty of God. And so our culture that we should be seeking to promote is the good, true, and beautiful of the kingdom of God. The next thing I would say that we should look for is, where is the good, true, and beautiful? And how can I support that and elevate that within our human cultures? So I bring that to the place of, looking at a vote, or looking at political party lines. What is the party that is looking for the good, true, and beautiful, that is trying to elevate the good, true, and beautiful, that aligns more with our Christian values? But the article itself, and you can please share about the article. I do not think that many people really take time to think about culture, and that not all cultures are equal, because we are always being pushed into a narrative that says all cultures are equal. You need to lift this culture, lift that culture, lift this culture over here, and make sure that everybody's culture is on display. When at times we need to also recognize that not every culture is equal.
And when you mean equal, I think what you're meaning is like equally aligned
Equally
with the
aligned,
good,
equal in morality.
true, and beautiful.
Yeah,
And the only standard for that is scripture.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. Um, there's a couple more comments and then we're out. Susie says, with the power of executive orders that Biden has abused, Kamala can circumvent the legislative branch just like he did. Look, I agree with you, but I'm also going to push back. Trump had a lot of, I
Yes.
think, excessive executive orders as well. I am not a fan of the whole executive order culture and signing all of those the first day. I think that that's can really become an abuse of power pretty quickly. I think it's a bad precedent. Um, do you think Christians will have to go underground? I think it's a spectrum issue. I mean, right now, there's some places like not putting uh, pronouns in your bio at work is a form of having to go underground. You know, there it just is going to depend on I think that the good thing is that there have been many court decisions in recent years that continue to affirm religious freedom. And so we um, must stand strong in supporting legal entities that are willing to fight for those freedoms. And there was another one just last week of a teacher, and that court battle started back in 2019, that said that he did not have to use students' preferred pronouns.
Mhm.
And so there have been several court cases affirming religious freedom recently. That trend continues, and I think that's a really good sign for Christians in many respects. But we might have to get smart about suing our way out of some things and bringing lawsuits and learning how to push back more. Um, Jenny's got a question about the Pope. I'm going to answer it in one sentence. Do you see what the Pope recently said about other religions? Yes, I did see it. And it's basically affirming what we Christians call a version of universalism, that
Mhm.
all religions can lead to God. He's out of step with historic Christianity. He's out of step with the historic Catholic belief. And sadly, Catholicism and the College of Cardinals seems to be on a trajectory of progressivism. But the Pope splainers will come on here and tell me I'm wrong. So there's that.
Yeah, no, the only way is through Jesus.
Yeah. So, anyways, those are
Oh, hold on. I want to mention what Jenny said. Jenny mentioned that sounds similar to what the Pope was trying to say. So I asked the question because I wasn't familiar with what the Pope said. And she said, what Monique was talking about, all cultures being equal, the Pope was at some point at some event that involved other religions. I am not saying that all cultures are equal. I am saying that some cultures are actually better than other cultures. I would say our Christ-centered culture is the best. Like the culture of the kingdom is, though we be imperfect humans, that is the culture that we should be looking toward, is the culture of the kingdom. Would not say that, like a cannibalistic culture would be the same as, a culture that participates in worshiping Jesus or things like that. So no, all cultures are not the same, nor is as if with the Pope saying that um all religions are equal. All religions are not equal.
they're
Not
not all
they
paths
are
to
that
God.
all paths do not lead to God. We know as historic Christians that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And
That's
so
that's what makes the resurrection so important. Is everything in our faith. centers on the resurrection. So
yeah, so Jenny, I am sorry for any confusion. I hope that that brings clarity, that I do not see, one, all cultures being the same, two, all religions being the same.
okay, that's it for this week. Make sure that you are subscribed to our weekly digital newsletter. You can get a free resource when you do that. It's an ebook written by our friend, Dr. Harold Felder, about answering the question, is Christianity a white man's religion? That's the best way to stay in touch with us in case we lose control over our social media accounts from the tech gurus. And if you want to stay in touch with us and know all of our latest resources, being subscribed to our weekly digital newsletter is the best way. Just go to our website, centerforbiblicalunity.com, and fill out the form that is listed at the bottom of the homepage. We also want to say thank you to all of our donors who make this ministry possible and keep us deployed in full-time mission work in being able to teach and train all of you, as well as being available for a pastor call like I had earlier today, having a Christian school email us, a major Christian ministry email us and say, hey, can you come train my staff? Can you jump on a Zoom call with me? All of those things are made possible because of people like you, and we need your support. The giving has been way down this year, and if you are finding our conversations helpful in the growth of your faith, we would really appreciate it if you would pray and ask the Lord whether you might partner with us in ministry. We are trusting God to provide all of our needs
Every day.
This is not any sort of emotional manipulation or crying wolf or anything like that. We do have some serious situations, but we are trusting the Lord and just letting you, our friends and family, know of what our situation is. We would want to continue to do ministry and stay full time so that we can research and write and do all of the things that we do. So thank you so much for watching, and be looking for a lot of exciting things coming in the coming weeks. If you missed our mini doc over the weekend about our backstory and our friendship, go check that out at Center for Biblical Unity YouTube channel.
Wait, we need to talk about October 14th.
No, we don't. We're way over time.
No. Hold on. Way over time. People, listen. So on October 14th, we're going to have a virtual book launch party that the auntie, Alisa Childers, is going to host. And we're going to have some guests come on and talk about the book and what their thoughts were of the book. So make sure that you mark your calendars. It's October 14th. That's going to be a Monday. And it's going to be from 6 to 7:30 Pacific time. We are going to have a good time, and we want to make sure that all of you are invited. We have started social media advertisings about it, so your invite is out there, okay? Family, come to the party.
All right, friends, we will see